Now, this nickname Tachade has been used against you for a long time, hasn't it? It's even from before Tarcísio, since the time you were mayor. No.
No.
In the Santa Marta network, right?
That's it. But anyway.
No, that's not true.
This one?
That's not true.
Tachade has been around for a few years, right?
No, it's about the imported clothing tax issue, right?
There are fans that I can't control. That's why Haddad will get it. I can't control that. If he wants to root against me, he will. If he wants to understand me, that's different. I want to speak to those who want to understand what happened. The supporter, whether of Lululism or fascism, already has a predisposition. The head of the military police, Tarcísio, in Tarcísio's view, should be classified as a terrorist because he is covering up for military police officers who served organized crime. Whoever turns a blind eye, whoever ignores the military police officer who acts in favor of organized crime, what are they? But Tarcísio is increasing it here. Who raised this state fuel tax? Was it President Lula? It's the state tax. Anyone who knows Flávio can't imagine him as a presidential figure. He is republic. It's not possible. We're talking about something completely out of place. We're discussing someone who got wealthy in politics without achieving anything. Got rich without ever having worked. We're talking about a senator or congressman who's been in office for over 20 years and hasn't passed any meaningful bill for the country. During his father's term as president, he couldn't get his own projects approved, not even when he was the president's son. I mean, someone says, no, but it's really hard to get a bill passed. But when your father is the president and you still can't get a bill passed, it's because there's nothing worthwhile in what you do. Man, these are things you can't even imagine. What this man did at the Federal Revenue Service, how he filled the government with his own people. I got there later to set things straight. He was one of the main people behind ending the tie-breaking vote in the car, and it was because of pressure from businessmen who didn't pay taxes.
How do you explain his son's electoral strength, Minister?
It's not his son. His son doesn't have...
But the poll is showing that he has a high rate.
No, the one who has it is the Bolsonaro brand. The Bolsonaro brand is what's getting votes in Brazil. This is unbelievable, and it's a loyalty I've never seen in Brazil. I don't know of an equivalent phenomenon in Brazil, and you rarely see it outside of Brazil.
Not even Lulism?
No. President Lula has a very critical base. It fluctuates. You have to be accountable to this base all the time. This base demands to be convinced all the time. It's not like that. In fact, our activists are not easy to deal with, and it's great that it's this way, because we work with critical citizens. Now, this completely uncritical citizen who acts like a member of a sect no matter what happens. Voting for Flávio Bolsonaro just because of his father's name?
My question is more about why. I mean, I think it's actually important. This is another fake news that's been widely used against you, that you didn't study economics, which isn't true. Look, actually, this is the second time I'm saying this, and it's the second time I'm going to get criticized for it. That's right.
Yeah, but people joke around. I joked with a friend of mine in an interview. I joked with a friend who was in the audience, and then they made a big deal out of it. I went, look, to solve this problem, I was a student. I graduated in law. I took my first and last bar exam because I passed in February 1986. And I traveled, came back. I was a backpacker. When I came back, I decided to take the economist exam to earn a master's degree in economics, which is a very difficult exam. I joked that I studied for 2 months because many spend years preparing for this exam, but I passed after just 2 months. I made a joke because I always made fun of economists who said the exam was hard, that I had only studied for 2 months. So they made this joke a reason. I have a master's degree in economics. I was a minister of the I even got praise from Folha de São Paulo in an edition.
That's amazing.
That's amazing, isn't it?
But Mano, let me finish. I want to finish.
Finish?
Here's the thing. There's law, economics, and he's a political scientist. That's my main point. How do you classify this phenomenon of displacement? And I'm really using that expression, right? When you lose contact with a minimal reality, which is what's happening. Again, right? Regardless of political position, there are people leaving everything behind thinking they're going to Paraguay, that they're actually going to find Switzerland.
Didn't some people just drink detergent recently? Danny, these mass phenomena, I'm not joking about this, because it involves people's lives. How many people died of COVID because they didn't get vaccinated?
More than 700,000.
No, but some people didn't get vaccinated. When there was no vaccine, he committed a crime. He cut emergency aid before vaccinating people. That's why Brazil has the worst indicator among the 3 countries where the most people died of COVID proportionally to the population. That's what Bolsonaro created.
So about Bolsonaro,
And your Tarcísio used to laugh at this kind of thing back then.
minister recently,
About him during the 2022 campaign, why didn't he take oxygen to Manaus? He said he couldn't take it by plane. Come on, right? There's nothing. Then you keep announcing one model after another. There's always some mock-up of a Tarcísio project. Man, I mean, they're beautiful. It was all made with artificial intelligence, but there are no results, guys. I'll give another example that I think is enlightening. Tarcísio made contracts, renewed and granted railway concessions, without any attention to the public interest. Without any attention. It's not me saying this, it's the Federal Court of Accounts, okay? It's not an offense to say that the Federal Court of Accounts agreed to renegotiate the concessions that he extended below the grant price and with less commitment to new investments. Mr. Renan Filhos, who made many more concessions than Tarcísio, even had an article published about it in Folha de São Paulo from yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, by Bruno Ribeiro, showing that he did much less than Renan, and he's called the Tarcísio of asphalt. He did less than Renan, who succeeded him. Very well. What else did Renan do? He took all of Tarcísio's contracts and had to review them. Renan Filhos, the Minister of Transport, had to review all of Tarcísio's contracts. So I ask, will I have to look at Tarcísio's contracts? Yes, I will. All of them. Will I have to review them? I'll have to reread the Samba SP contract to see what it says. If there's any abusive clause against the consumer, I'll have to question it. I'll have to reread these free flow things he's putting in there. Imagine you drive on a road, you think there's no toll. Suddenly you have a debt on a website you don't even know about. And if you don't guess that you owe that toll, you get fined for not paying the toll, for toll evasion. Where have you ever seen a well-rated governor do something like this to the people? There's a constitutional amendment which determines the reduction of tax spending, which are the tax exemptions for the king's friends. There are a lot of people who didn't pay taxes, but they just didn't pay taxes. When you make someone pay a tax they weren't paying before, you're not creating a new tax. Sorry. Tarcísio is trying to use tricks to make up a story. So let's say among those 37 there's betting involved. Did I create the income tax? No. It has always existed. Doesn't pay. I pay, the betting sector doesn't pay. If I make the betting sector pay, am I creating a tax? What's the point? The media didn't pay taxes on the payroll. They went years without paying that payroll tax. Guedes tried to end this, Guido tried to end this, Levi tried to end this, all the ministers tried to end this privilege of the media. I ended it. I said, look, this privilege is going to end. Did I create a tax? You call that creating a tax? I say I call it something else, courage to face the lobbies. That's what I call it. Banks pay less income tax than workers. Is that creating a tax? For Tarcísio, it is. For me, it's tax fairness. So we have different views on everything. No two people are more different than Tarcísio and me. Let me explain why.
the 2022 campaign,
He
friends, right? The 22 campaign was
because he didn't lie.
known as a very civilized campaign between you and him.
You don't say that I created a tax, you're lying.
That friendly atmosphere from 22 won't come back. It won't happen.
No, I don't have it. You can go back. One of the differences between fascists and Democrats is that fascists have enemies. Democrats don't have enemies.
Tarcísio is a fascist.
The second time,
Is Tarcísio considered part of fascism?
I think he's flirting with the far right. I wouldn't put him there. I wouldn't call him that today. But when he supports Trump's tariff policies, he's flirting with the far right. When he laughs at an anti-vaccine joke by Bolsonaro, he's flirting with the far right. That laugh he gave at Bolsonaro's unfunny joke.
in other words, if there were 3 fascists at a table and there was a protest with 5 people and 2 of them didn't stand up, are there 5 fascists or was Tarcísio at that table?
No, that's not it. I'm being very clear. I think there is a far-right movement in Brazil today, very organized, that lies, that slanders people, mistreats people. They are slanderers. And I think they have the typical behavior of people who turn an opponent into an enemy, who want to eliminate the other person. I don't want to eliminate anyone. I've never made enemies. Now, this flirtation of his, this flirting of his with the far right, because Tarcísio, he doesn't want to lose the far right vote, and he doesn't want to seem as unscrupulous as the far right. He needs to choose. What does he want for the country? Making jokes about vaccines, about deaths from COVID?
But is Tarcísio a Democrat? Is he committed to democracy?
He never spoke out about January 8th. He never spoke out about the military dictatorship. What's his view on the military dictatorship? Would he have the courage to say what he really thinks about the dictatorship? I have my doubts. Would he have the courage to say what happened on January 8th? For him, it was just a commotion. For him, the fact that there was a plan to assassinate the president, a plan to prevent voters from voting using the federal highway police for that, a plan to blow up the Brasilia airport. He thinks it was just a commotion.
Now let me...
With the involvement of active duty military personnel, with the generals who are now in prison, he thinks this is just a commotion? Take the statements he made about January 8th. You can check them. They're public.
Let me bring this here, because here's the thing, right? Regardless of the judgment you make about his actions or not, this statement of his, I'll go back to it here. Jovem Pan makes it clear he is monitoring movements. Because the fact is, this speech that you call crazy, reckless, something made to deceive, it actually produces results in real life. You must be aware that there is a wave, the largest wave of Brazilian migration to Paraguay. On social media, encouraged by social media, they are calling Paraguay the new Switzerland of Latin America, of South America. And it's no wonder, right, that he says companies are moving.
And how did Brazil break the record for job creation?
Guys, can I do it?
How do you create jobs if companies are leaving Brazil?
Hold on, let me finish here. Can I make the disclaimer as part of my duty that it's a lie, right? No, not all of them. The largest protein production company in the world, JTF, is here in Brazil as well. So it's a lie. He uses at most a figure of speech. He generalizes, but he makes a mistake. The problem is there are 28,000 Brazilians in line today to enter Paraguay because they believe it's the new Brazilian Switzerland.
Do you know how many Brazilians live in Paraguay?
And do you know what their narrative is?
There are hundreds of thousands.
They claim Brazil's tax burden is unbearable.
The tax burden in Brazil has been relatively the same since the end of Fernando Henrique Cardoso's administration. It fluctuates by about half a point either way.
A political scientist?
I'm giving you official data, but I'm saying that the tax burden in Brazil since the end of Fernando Henrique Cardoso's administration, I'm talking about 2002, has been relatively the same. Half a point up, half a point down.
We're not...
The net federal tax burden is not the highest in history. That's right. 2010...
I won't argue facts with you, sir. Facts are data. Perfect.
I have to point out that our listeners don't know that number by heart. The federal government's net tax burden was the highest in 2010 because the economy grew 7.5%. There was a huge formalization of labor, Social Security revenues skyrocketed, and there was the highest tax collection when the economy grew 7.5 in 2010. It will never be what it was in 2010 again. I'm going to repeat the concept because then someone comes along to fact-check the revenue.
Sounds like Bolsonaro supporters discussing the gassing agendas.
I'm talking here about a concept that every economist knows, which is net federal revenue. It's what's left. It's not what the union collected. It's what's left in the union's coffers after distributing to states and municipalities what is rightfully theirs. It's not true that we have the highest tax burden.
Perfect.
Unlike the state of São Paulo, Tarcísio is increasing it here. Who raised the fuel ICMS tax? Was it President Lula? It's a state tax.